On the eve of what Arkansas officials hoped would be the state's first executions in more than a decade, they faced off with death row inmates in multiple legal battles over whether these lethal injections would take place as scheduled. At the heart of the fight is an unprecedented fury of executions that have pushed Arkansas to the forefront of the American death penalty at a time when states are increasingly retreating from the practice. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson had scheduled 8 lethal injections to take place over an 11-day window, a pace unmatched in the modern era, which he defended as needed because one of the state's drugs was set to expire and no replacement could be guaranteed amid an ongoing shortage. So basically, they want to, everyone who's on death row, they want to already kill them because the drug is supposed to expire soon. But, I mean, I don't understand. So if the drug expires, then what? There's other ways of killing people who are on death row other than lethal injection. And the fact that they have a shortage, I mean, if you don't have any more fucking drugs, leave them in prison. Now I don't know what these men did. There's 8 of them, but my thing is like, don't try to carry out all these executions back to back. Because what if the drug doesn't work? You know what I'm saying? Then you wasted the drug on someone who there was probably someone else who needed it more. Anyway, hours before the first execution was scheduled to begin, fights continued on several fronts in state and federal court. A federal judge had issued an order over Easter weekend staying all of the executions, while other court orders had already stayed individual executions and barred the state from using one of its lethal injection drugs. Although most executions are carried out with little public notice, the scheduled lethal injections in Arkansas have reverberated far beyond the state because of the compressed timetable. So I guess the media caught wind of what was going on, and I guess a lot more people know what's happening now. But yeah, so this is what's going on in Arkansas. It says, under Hutchinson's original schedule, Don W. Davis, 54, is the first inmate facing execution. Davis was convicted and sentenced to death in 1992 for killing Jane Daniel, according to court filings. Davis entered her home and found her alone with while her husband was away on a business trip, killing her in what state officials called an execution-style murder. A relative of Daniels declined to be interviewed. Davis was originally scheduled to be the first of 2 inmates facing execution Monday night. After his lethal injection, the state intended to execute Bruce Ward, 60, who was sentenced to death in October 1990 after being convicted of killing Rebecca Doss, an 18-year-old convenience store clerk. So I'm wondering, like, why these people are sentenced to death. He was sentenced to death in 1990. That was, what, 27 years ago? So why are they just now? I need to do more research on how death row works, or how people who are sentenced to death, why they stay in jail so long before they actually die. That doesn't make really any sense to me. On Friday afternoon, the Arkansas Supreme Court issued an order staying Ward's execution without explanation. In a petition to that court, Ward's attorneys described him as a diagnosed schizophrenic who has spent decades in solitary confinement without treatment for his mental illness, and argued that he was not competent to be executed. Arkansas appealed, seeking to have that stayed vacated, but on Monday morning, the state Supreme Court rejected that request. The Arkansas Supreme Court vacated its earlier order and issued another staying the execution, again offering no explanation, but nothing this time that 3 of the 7 justices would have rejected the stay request. A federal judge had earlier this month called off another execution after a state parole board said it would recommend changing the inmate sentence to life in prison without parole. This story will be updated throughout the day. So I guess that if these men are not able to be executed within this time frame, then their sentence will change to, instead of being on death row, to life without parole. But I still don't understand how these men go so long without, with these sentences of death or whatever, and being put on death row. Well, that's 27 years ago that he was sentenced to that. So why is he just now going to die?